Hello and welcome to Connect and Collaborate. I'm Alex Hopkins, your on-air producer, and I'm so excited because we are having our Colorado Election Watch series. This is episode 2 for the Secretary of State
candidates.
It's
Labor Day weekend. It's all right.
I have checked out. I checked out at 2 o'clock today. But I have in studio with me Ed Sealover with Denver Business Journal. How you doing, Ed?
Good. Thanks for having me back today.
Yes, of course. And I have on the phone with us Colorado Business Roundtable President Jeff Wasden. How you doing, Jeff? Where are you today?
I am excellent, and I am heading to a baseball game in D.C. to watch the Nationals. It's going to be a great game and a great way to celebrate holiday weekend.
Well,
great to have Ed back on, and great to have Jenna in studio. Thanks, Jenna, for joining us.
Yes, I have Jenna Griswold. She is the Democratic candidate for Secretary of State. Welcome, Jenna. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, so I'm going to let these guys jump in.
Yeah, excited, Jenna, to have you. And really what we've tried to do with this Election Watch series with the Denver Business Journal is really for the business voice about the impacts of these particular offices have within the business community, and certainly within the Secretary of State's office, because of such a big nexus on the business filing and fees and data collection. This is a perfect opportunity to help you educate the business community on some of your goals and ideas. So for those that may not know you, Jenna, why don't we just start with a real simple question and give the listeners a chance to get to know you. Tell us a little bit about your background and why in the heck you decided to run for Secretary of State.
Sure. But before I do that, Jeff, do you remember we actually met several years ago, 7 years ago maybe, when I was director of the governor's Washington, D.C. office? And you came out to Washington, D.C., I think, with the aerospace industry. So I don't know if you remember that.
I have a great chance to meet. There's an incredible office back there, and we're chatting a few things about an opportunity for you and what you were looking at doing and wanting to get back to Colorado. And clearly, not only a way to get back to Colorado, but something for you to do.
Well, just a little thing to do. So my...
Not taking any of your time, is it?
What's that? Running for office?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, just a little bit. I've never run for office before, and frankly, I wasn't ever planning on it. But the Secretary of State's office is so important, and there's so much work we can do there. And I'm running for real simple reasons, to make sure that every eligible Coloradan, Republican, Independent, or Democrat, has their voice heard in an accessible, fair, and secure election. I also want to lead the charge on campaign finance reform, so we stop dark money in state races. And then lastly, really provide tools to small business owners and entrepreneurs. Government should be providing tools, not barriers to success. And speaking about coming back to Colorado, I grew up in Colorado. I grew up in Estes Park, so in rural Colorado. And I grew up really working class. Growing up, my mom, she would work 1 or 2 jobs, always 1, most of the time 2, and we would still sometimes have to go to food banks. So I actually started working really young. It was the summer after 7th grade at the old post office cafe in Estes Park, which was very unironically right next to the post office. And so it was right after the summer of 7th grade. I started washing dishes, graduated to learn how to make coffee, which is no longer an issue. Pro at that now. But I really saw how a lot of Coloradan families were struggling, that our situation was not unique. And that's inspired me to be the first person in my family to go to a 4-year college and then to law school, because I wanted to help even the playing field for Coloradans. Now, I did start my legal career in Washington, D.C., practicing international anti-corruption law, but I've been barred in Colorado. And I began working on elections as a voter protection attorney for President Obama. And when we met, Jeff, is when I was serving as director of Governor Hickenlooper's D.C. office. I worked on the whole federal portfolio. I loved the job. When the flood hit northern Colorado in 2013, it hit really close to home. So if you guys are interested, I'll talk more about that. But we were out of communication with my mom for 5 days. So I was able to really feel that, see all the devastation, but go back to D.C. as the D.C. office director, work with our congressional delegation, Republican and Democrat, and help bring back more than $1 billion of flood relief. So I just love serving the state. I wanted to come home and open my own small business, a legal practice in Louisville. Now, The reason that I'm running for Colorado Secretary of State is, again, I think there's so much important work to do. When it comes to voting rights, I believe that the Secretary of State should be rapidly trying to expand participation. That's why I'd like to expand automatic voter registration, which is a mechanism to get more eligible people registered to vote. When it comes to transparency, I believe people who are serving in government are there on behalf of the people, and in a democracy, we have to be transparent. So what I would like to do in terms of that is close campaign finance loopholes and really enforce campaign finance violations. Along those lines, I'd also like to see lobbyists reporting their clients in a more timely manner so that the people of Colorado, other lobbyists, know what they're working on. It's just a matter of transparency. And then again, I believe the Secretary of State's office can really provide tools to new business owners, entrepreneurs. I want to make it into a one-stop shop for business. And I'm sure we're going to be able to get into some of the specifics. Alex is rapidly writing down questions, maybe follow-up questions. And I'm just really happy to be here, and that's why I'm running.
Good. Yes. No. I was writing more information than follow-up questions here. But so as we're going through your background there, it's a varied background, obviously. Tell us why, though, you think it qualifies you to be the state's top elections and top business registration official.
Sure. Well, first and foremost, the reason I'm running again is to really make government transparent and work for people. When we're talking about automatic voter registration, that's a simple mechanism that I'd like to expand, get up and totally running at the DMV and expand outwards so that we get more eligible people registered to vote. I announced my candidacy at this point 13 months ago, when my opponent sent all of our voter data to the Trump Voter Commission, causing thousands of Coloradans to cancel their voter registration. Lots of Republicans came out and said, we're not sending voter information. Wayne did something different, sent our voter data, caused thousands of people to cancel. I believe the Secretary of State should always be working towards bolstering and expanding participation in our democracy. That's why I'd like to expand automatic voter registration. When it comes to the business side, look, I'm a small business owner. I've opened a business in Colorado. I know the difficulties in doing that. I've worked on multiple election cycles. I have my own small business, and I have a vision to modernize at the end of the day and a plan to do it.
Okay. Jeff?
And I want to very briefly get into not only some of the goals if you're elected to office, but do you have other goals outside of that if you could use the platform as an elected statewide official that are important to you, as well as what you'd like to accomplish within the office?
I just want to make the Secretary of State's office work as well as possible. And for me, there's a couple tenets. That means IT. Look, our statewide voter registration system. So our automatic poll book, which has to work in a state that has mail-in ballots for the election to work in a timely manner, that has gone down in Colorado in 2010, 2014, 2016, causing hours of delay, 2 to 3 hours in some spots on election day. I want to fix that. We have cyber threats like we've never seen before. We need real leadership in that office. And again, in terms of transparency, I believe campaign finance laws are really important. We have campaign finance laws so that people can see who's trying to influence the outcome of campaigns and how they're trying to do that. Right now in Colorado, we have some loopholes in our campaign finance laws. I'd like to work with the legislature to close them, but then really audit our campaign finance filings. So that means when, entities, candidates are spending money to influence the outcome of a campaign, they have to do a filing with the Secretary of State. Right now, so we have a system in Colorado, it's called Tracer, that you file with. If Tracer right now bings, bing, 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 someone took too much money, bing, 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 a filing is overdue, then the Secretary of State will send an automated letter and say, hey, you're out of compliance. However, there's not enough manpower just looking at the filings themselves. We aren't doing enough auditing by humans. So if money is coming in from an illegal source, from a corporation, from a foreign national, the government might not pick that up. I want to make sure that we have eyes on those filings. Campaign finance laws are there for transparency. And by the way, the congressman out in California who ended up, he's been in the news the last week or two.
Duncan Hunter.
Who bought those shorts. He's done a bunch of things, but one of the things is they purchased shorts and said it was the Wounded Warriors donation. We found that because of campaign finance audits. So I'd like to do that. It increases transparency. And then lastly, enforcement. So in Colorado, for the most part, it's private citizens enforcing campaign finance violations. I believe the Secretary of State should play a more active role in doing that to make sure that our systems are really working. It's for transparency, it's for good democracy, and it's something I really believe in.
And let me just follow up real quick. You mentioned loopholes that you want to close. What kind of loopholes do you want to close?
Sure, there's a couple. So right now, there's a period in between the primary and election day where entities do not have to report electioneering. So that's materials that are being sent out to influence the outcome of a vote. I want to close that loophole. So the whole period between the primary and election day has to be disclosed. I also want to make sure that those disclosures, the paid for little disclosures that get put on campaign materials are mandatory. They're not mandatory for candidates, for example. Let's close that loophole so people know where money's coming from when they receive that electioneering flyer. But there's a step beyond that. You know, some states across the nation are requiring that the top 3 donors be disclosed in the disclosures, in the paid fors. So I think that's a really good idea. And again, it's increasing transparency. Coloradans are obviously extremely smart. And I believe the more facts that we give people, the better decisions they're going to be able to make.
All right. Now,
and I think most people understand the role of the Secretary of State's office as it comes to the election cycle. I don't know if a lot of people understand how important this office is.
Jeff, we're losing you just a little bit.
Business registrations, you bet, record keeping, nonprofit regulations, compliance issues. How do you feel those functions are being handled today, and what additional measures would you ensure that the business community has a seamless process and a great relationship with the current Secretary of State's office?
Yeah, so first and foremost, I really appreciate being here. And when we win this race, I hope to have a great relationship with the business community. I think Colorado, our economy is so important. It's doing so well, and we want to make sure that everybody can succeed. And I believe that government should be providing the tools to do that. So one thing that I would like to do is make sure that the Secretary of State's office serves as a one-stop business resource center. So, you know, small businesses, entrepreneurs, when they open for the first time, most folks know that they can organize some type of legal entity, so an LLC or something along those lines. So they eventually make it to the Secretary of State's office. And in Colorado, it's pretty easy, right? But if you are a first-time business owner, you might not know that you have to opt in or out of workman's comp, opt in or out of unemployment. If you live in Denver, even if you're a non-retail business, you have to file with the city. And if not, you're going to be hit with a fine. I live out in Louisville. You don't have to file with the city for a non-retail business. So I think that has to be really clear, seamless, right where you organize your business, right where you organize it. Because the last thing that we want to do is fine first-time business owners. These are people who are literally pulling themselves up by their bootstraps. We need to make sure that government works for them. And at the end of the day, something I do not believe in is bureaucratic government that's confusing and then fines people. That's not fair. That's not fair. But beyond that, we have all these great resources in Colorado for entrepreneurs and for the business community. I believe that should be right there where you organize your business. People don't know what they don't know. So it's really government's job to try to get everything into one spot. And I know that Wayne and the governor have set up a new platform recently, and it's a lot about what I'm talking about, a seamless transition to opening your business. But I think it has to be located right where you organize your business, because again, you don't know what you don't know. And you may know that, hey, I want to open up this LLC. Hey, I want to open up, I want to file for whatever type of business entity that I want. I might not know that there's a whole nother process located on a different website that could be a resource. We need to make sure that they know it right where they organize their entity.
Well, so where would that be exactly?
The Secretary of State's page.
Okay.
Right where you organize, right where you file your registration papers or your incorporation papers.
Okay. So you're talking about the idea of moving that to Secretary of State's page. I mean, what other things really is the office not doing now when you talk about being a help to business? Because I think both of you come down on the side of, hey, we want to help business do this, but just trying to determine what would be different under a Jenna Griswold administration.
I think I want to make sure systems work. So where systems are not working as well as they could right now, let's invest and really take them into the future. IT is extremely important, especially in the age that we're in. Again, our statewide voter registration system has gone down in a state like ours where we have great IT minds, both in government and in the private sector. It's gone down in 2010, 2014, and under Wayne's watch again in 2016, causing hours and hours of delay in some locations. When it comes to the cyber and the IT side, we have to make sure that personal information is protected, whether that's on the business side or on the voter reg side, whatever personal information we have with the state. And at the end of the day, look, we are in a evolving world, and there's no one answer to cyber. It's an attitude towards cyber. Cyber attacks will continue to innovate, and in government, we have to continue to innovate too, to be ahead of the dangers and the threats that come. One of the things that I plan to do is really go after resources. Our elections, not only did the voter registration rolls go down almost every single general election when they only have to be open one day a year, we were also targeted by Russian cyber attack in 2016. We weren't compromised, but we were targeted. After that, we've seen House Republicans kill a bill to provide resources to state election systems.
You're talking about U.S. House Republicans,
U.S. House Republicans.
Mm-hmm.
We've also seen in the last week or two the White House kill another bill that would require paper ballots and other security measures to really secure state elections across the nation. And at the end of the day, my opponent, Wayne Williams, fought against federal resources from the Department of Homeland Security after our elections were targeted in 2016. I have a different view. I say if the federal government wants to provide us with resources, I'll say yes and double it. I think these federal resources are incredibly important. And the IT structure of the Secretary of State's office touches everything. It touches, it's a big IT department. It touches the elections. It touches the business side. So we need to get as many resources as possible so that we continue to innovate and continue to be the securest state in the nation, both on the business side and on the election side.
Okay.
Jenna, there's a lawsuit right now charging that the Office of Secretary of State should not be allowed to use business fees to run elections. Where do you stand on that lawsuit? And if that lawsuit is successful, what kind of suggestions to changes on funding elections would you make personally?
Yeah, so, at the end of the day, the General Assembly has decided that business fees largely fund elections, not fully, but predominantly. This lawsuit, I think, would really, if it were successful in stopping the use of business fees, it would change a lot of big things. And I think we would have to work with the state legislature to find how we fund elections. Look, at the end of the day, my view is democracy has to work. Democracy has to work. And when we see attacks on our elections, it's attacks on our democracy, on our way of life. We want to have, faith in our elections, faith in the state, to have a good business community, to have a good life, to feel secure that there's a great future ahead. So it's something we'll have to work through, but I think it's a little premature in saying that that's going to happen, and we'll just have to see what the judiciary ends up holding.
But do you favor the current system, or would you prefer some other system of funding elections?
I think the current system works. I think the current one of the great things about Colorado, we have some of the lowest fees in the nation. That's great. I would be more aggressive towards federal funds. I believe that if there's federal funds for us to get in terms of elections or the business side, we should be going after those. And especially now, look, we're a swing state. So it's really important that our systems work. The governor's race in Colorado has been decided by 5,300 votes. There was just a primary for county commissioner decided by one vote. Our systems have to work. So I think that how the funding mechanisms are working right now are great, with the exception that I would take a different approach to DC. If House Republicans, House Democrats, whoever are trying to give more money to our systems, I think that's something that we need, not only in Colorado, but across the nation, to make sure that our systems continue to be secure, both on the business side and on the election side.
So just to play devil's advocate then, I mean, what would you say to groups like the NFIB or business people to say, well, why are my registration fees funding elections? Shouldn't they be going to just fund our systems?
Well, so I think, again, we'll have to wait to what the judiciary says. It's been like that for quite some time in Colorado. Sorry, these headphones are sliding down.
Yeah. Aim for the crown.
Okay. It's something that I approach, but again, we'll have to see what the judiciary says and what the law is afterwards and go from there.
Okay. Now, kind of going off on that topic, you started to discuss fees. Both the current Secretary of State and his predecessor made a number of efforts to reduce business fees that fund the office, essentially. 98% of the funding comes from those. How do you feel about the fees? Are they in the right place now? Do we need more money coming in to fund the office? Do we possibly need to lower them some more? Let's talk the spectrum here. What do you want?
Yeah, so I think the fee structure as is good. I support the current fee structure. At this point, it was last October, we were out in Brush, Colorado. And at that time, I was either in a three-way or four-way primary. We were in a 3 or 4 hour forum. There was like 60 people there for a Secretary of State and Treasurer forum. And that was one of the questions. Would you do basically a business organization holiday, a free fee holiday? And my other two opponents said yes. And I said no. And this is what I can say about that. I grew up very working class. I actually sold my car for $400 to buy my plane ticket to get to law school. I know how hard people work. At the same time, I don't agree with lowering fees further because they do fund our elections. We have to have secure systems. And we have the lowest fees already in the nation. $10 renewing fee is, I think, beyond reasonable. So I do support the current structure and would like to stay there. But with that said, I'm not going to be callous with people's money. So if there's a way to cut anything, of course we should look at that. But as the vantage point, from my vantage point now, I support the current fee system and how it works.
And let me just, before Jeff jumps in here, talk to you one more thing about that. Do you feel it's fair right now that businesses are paying the same fees regardless of their size? Is that equitable? Do we need to look at different fees for small and large businesses? Or do you feel like, hey, we've got it where we need it?
I think we have it where we need it because the fees are so low. But again, I'm really open to sitting down with the business community. If people would like to discuss this, I want to hear everybody's opinions. But my point of view right now is the fees are okay as is.
Okay.
Jenna, you raised really a great question. I'm sure we're getting close to the break here, but what process would you like to see for that ongoing conversation or dialogue or review with the business community? Your personal style and reaching out and kind of creating a conversation with businesses.
Yeah, that's a really good question, Jeff. And I would love to talk to you about your ideas about that. But I would love a constant stream of communication. We need to make sure that government works for everybody, whether that's big business, small business, first-time business owners. I would love to have a bi-weekly or, if that's too much, a monthly meeting with leaders in the business community just to make sure everything's going okay and to see what we can improve on. But that's something a conversation I'd like to have with the business community to see how often they want to sit down and talk, because I also don't want to take too much of their time.
We appreciate that. Thank you so much, Jenna. We'll be right back here on Connect and Collaborate. Stay with us. Be sure to like and subscribe our YouTube page while you're here. And if you have any questions, hashtag CO Election Watch. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Connect and Collaborate. Once again, I'm Alex Hopkins, your on-air producer, and we are in the middle of our Colorado Election Watch series. We have moved on to the Secretary of State race. In studio, we have with us Democratic candidate Jenna Griswold and Ed Seeliver from the Denver Business Journal, and on the phone we have Jeff Wasden, Covert President. So I'm going to let you guys take it away from here.
Jen, I'm going to jump in and exercise a little editorial license and a shameless plug for COBRT and an event we're putting on around cybersecurity with Colorado State University Global on October 30th, History Colorado. Go to our website, sign up, all that great stuff. But it leads us into my next question about cybersecurity and the voting processes. And you've teased a little bit of info. While we were not impacted or affected, we were certainly targeted. Around the voting processes, the data, but there's a lot of sensitive business information that's collected by the office as well. How do you feel that the current security level within the Secretary of State's office is? Do you think it's acceptable? If not, what kind of changes would you like to see to ensure everybody's data and information is safe?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm so glad you guys are doing that event on October 30th.
Yes.
Cyber is something that we're going to continually have to grow and be at the forefront of technology, both on the business side and in government. So our elections, like I mentioned, have some issues that I would like to fix. So first and foremost, the statewide internal voter registration system is really necessary in a state like ours, because we have a mail ballot that comes to people who are registered to vote, but then you can also go vote in person. And to make that system work, we need to know if the mail ballot has been turned in or not. So for example, say you receive your mail-in ballot. Are you okay? Say you receive your mail-in ballot, but you misplace it and you decide to go vote in person. So what the statewide voter registration system does is says, okay, person Luis, who's coming to vote in person, he hasn't voted his mail-in ballot. We're going to cancel his mail-in ballot so he can vote in person. So that interconnectivity and the real-time system is really important. And in Colorado, we and the state legislature have really believed in the idea that voting should be accessible in whatever way you want to do it, whether it's mail-in or whether you want to come in day of. And it becomes really problematic when that system goes down. So like I mentioned, it went down in 2010, 2014, and 2016. And in some of the more busy sites on Election Day, it caused 1 hour to 3 hour lines. And it's really important that everybody, regardless of party, if you're eligible to vote, you have your voice heard. So whether you're a Republican or Independent, a Green Party, a Democrat, if you show up on Election Day, you should have your voice heard, if you want to vote in person or if you want to have your mail-in ballot. So first and foremost, I want to fix that system. In a state like ours, there's really just no defense for a system that only has to work one day a year going down as often as ours go down. And I would love to partner with the National Cyber Security Center and with the best minds at the end of the day in government and in the private sector to make sure that our systems are working. When it comes to cyber attacks, 21 states were targeted by Russian cyber attacks in 2016. And we saw about a month ago President Trump stand up next to Vladimir Putin and refuse to denounce attacks on our elections. We saw Rex Tillerson, the National Secretary of State, before he was tweet fired, saying that Russia and other foreign countries are already looking at elections. And then we have House Republicans, National House Republicans, and the White House killing bills to help states, both in terms of resources and mandating paper ballots and other security measures. Luckily in Colorado, we have some of the security measures that other states don't have. So for example, the state legislature passed a requirement that we do a risk limiting audit. And what that audit does is it So to take a step back, we are predominantly on paper ballot in Colorado. And what a risk limiting audit does is audit the tabulation system, which is the machine that counts the votes, to make sure that the tabulation system is doing a good job. So we have that thanks to the state legislature. We also have other things already in Colorado law, or in practice in Colorado, two-step authentication. But at the end of the day, even two-step authentication is not foolproof. There's ways around two-step authentication. So we need to be continually improving. The Secretary of State's office did an exercise with 24 county clerks recently, and you vote at the county clerk at the county level. And the exercise was sending a phishing email to county clerks. 5 or 6 emails were sent, and the links in the phishing emails that, if this wasn't an exercise, would open a door to possible hackers, were clicked 757 times. So we do have some of the most secure elections. CAP just gave our elections a B rating. I really believe that a B rating is good for high school exams, not for the security of our systems. And we have to continue to innovate. After our elections were targeted, Wayne came out and fought against federal resources from the Department of Homeland Security. These resources, what they are, it's critical infrastructure program. And what this program does is it does testing. They try to get in and penetrate systems. It's the same program that oversees the nuclear grid, the banking grid, our electricity grid, everything that's critical to our infrastructure. If the federal government offers resources, even if it's trying to penetrate our systems, to me, I will say yes, of course. Let's make sure that every county is also having those resources. Let's track what counties are using those resources to make sure that we're taking advantage of everything that we need. So I think cyber is a commitment to continually improving.
And let me ask you, let me kind of redirect you here, because we've talked a lot about, and it's definitely worth talking about cyber protection of our elections, but what of our business information? I mean, we're not seeing yet, or that we don't know about, the Russians trying to go after that, but I mean, other hackers are going to get in and try to use this for different means. How do we protect the vital business information we have in the Secretary of State's office? Do you feel like it's being protected enough? Are there new steps we need to take?
Well, I think we should take as many resources as possible and test our systems as hard as we can test them. I would love to add on staff in the Secretary of State's IT department. Cyber will continually be something that we have to work towards, and I want to be really aggressive in making sure that we have safe systems set up. What was it? Like 44% of Americans were affected in the Equifax hacks. This isn't something new. It's something that we're seeing in government, in big business, on the city level. We just have to do everything that we can to make sure we're ready to go. What's also important is making sure that websites work seamlessly. So I really want to modernize the website. Right now, it's okay. It works. It gets the job done. I think we could do a lot more. So when I'm talking about the Small Business Resource Center, let's think about, what do I need as a first-time business owner, and make that happen. Have it laid out in a seamless fashion. So that means in big, bold letters, right where you go to organize your LLC, hey, small business owner, hey, first-time entrepreneur, we know you're working really hard to make a better life for yourself or bring your idea to fruition. But don't forget, you have to do unemployment. You have to do workman's comp. You have to file with Denver. And here's all these resources. So let's make the systems work better for people. Right now on the Secretary of State's website, if you do a business search, so you enter in a business and do a search to see if it's active, and you click the back button, 50% of the time, the website doesn't have the capacity to go backwards. So those are simple things, but I think simple things are important to fix, and big things are important to get in front of. And that's what I hope to do as Secretary of State.
And I want to go one other area here in terms of business data, and not so much the current secretary, but the past one had really tried to did contests where he brought people in to see how they could best use the business data, what could be done to use it for either economic development purposes or other purposes for the state. What do you feel about ways of making the data not just open to people, but easier for economic developers, site selectors, others to use on the site? Do you feel like it's where it needs to be? Should we be looking to do more to make other businesses be able to use our data?
So the legislature has passed actually legislation on this, and I think again we can always do things better. So I think we should sit down with the business community and say, hey, where are the holes? If systems are working okay, and they're working okay, that's fine, but they need to be looking towards the future. One of the things Colorado does is things really well. We always want to be the shining light, whether that comes to entrepreneurs and supporting them and new ideas, government. We should be the best. We shouldn't be a B model. We should always be striving for what's around the corner. And that's along the lines, one of the reasons I want to expand automatic voter registration. So the idea of automatic voter registration is that when you go to the DMV, and this is actually already happening in Colorado, you go to the DMV, and instead of them saying, oh, I see you're here to get your license. I see you can register to vote. Would you like to vote? Would you like to register to vote? Instead of that question being asked when you go get your license, you switch the burden and say, I see that you're getting your license and that you're eligible to vote. I'm going to sign you up to vote unless you opt out. One of the things that I want to do, and what I mean by expanding automatic voter registration, is take that model outside of the DMV. So younger people living in bigger cities, they're not driving as much. They're just not. And I believe government should meet people where they are. And on top of that, looking towards trying to read the crystal ball of the future, we can expect or possibly expect a lot of driverless car technology coming out. So we want to make sure that where people can register to vote and where automatic voter registration happens expands outwards from the DMV.
Such as?
Well, we have to build out the IT infrastructure, but there's places already where under federal law, state agencies have to offer voter registration. But it really could happen wherever we'd want it, at public universities, at anywhere where someone interacts with the state. But we have to build out the IT. So state agencies, IT, and how they enter information is different than how the Secretary of State does. So you have to make sure that our state information platform, the bus system, can talk to each other. But that's something I really want to do. So we're getting in front of, in 3 years or 10 years, drastic drops at the DMV. So I don't ever attest to have all the answers. And I want to work with the business community to when you're asking about data, what trends does the business community see coming around the corner, and what data do they need? I want to meet regularly with the business community, so as government, we can try to provide the resources for things right when they happen, or hopefully a little bit before.
Jenna, one of the things that you've talked about is wanting to get dark money out of politics. It's kind of that connotation that's associated with business or labor groups, donations to certain campaigns or campaign-focused committees. Talk about why that's such a concern and passion of yours, and what kind of steps you would work through if elected to get that done.
Right. So there's two ways money, I think, two ways to think about money in politics. First is the Citizens United, where money can come in. And the second is whether the money coming in is transparent or not. What I'm specifically talking about is whether political spending is transparent or not. And that's dark money, that's secret political spending. And I really do believe it's crippling our democracy. In a democracy, people should know who's trying to influence the outcome of elections and how they're trying to do it. And I think it's really important that Coloradans have access to facts. And all too often on the national stage, and occasionally in Colorado too, we have materials and money being put into the outcome of campaigns that distort the facts. So what I'm proposing to do is making sure that we're setting or shining sunshine on secret political spending, so it's transparent. That's it. And what I specifically want to do, Jeff, is make sure that political spending in state races in Colorado is transparent, close the loopholes. I would love to form a working group with the municipalities. Different counties, different cities have different degrees of laws and rules on the books in regards to this. But it is a major issue, and we should know how groups or individuals are really trying to influence campaigns. The Business Roundtable might have a candidate that they really like, and then here comes $100,000 worth of flyers dumped in, and you have no idea who dumped it in. It's just bringing more transparency. But then again, when it's not only about closing the loopholes, it's making sure that we have eyes on the filings. That's how we know that Colorado law is being respected. That's how we know foreign money's not coming in to the outcome of campaigns, to influence campaigns. That's how we know illegal spending is not happening. And I believe we should enforce laws and not enforce laws against the first-time candidate who is filing incorrectly. I like Colorado law and how right now it has a cure mechanism. So if you are a candidate or a committee and you file incorrectly, you have 10 days to cure that filing. I support that. If there are entities that are, their first time, they don't have the money to hire a lawyer and the explanation just isn't clear enough, we want to bring them along and make sure they know the rules. One thing that I fundamentally believe is that 98 or 99% of non-compliance is from lack of knowledge, not actual intent. So it's the onus is on government to make sure that the rules are really clear. But for that other 1 or 2% that are dodging laws and really going unscathed, I'd like to put an end to that. I think we should be enforcing campaign finance violations in Colorado outside of just the private citizens bringing complaints.
And just because I think some people are going to have some questions about that, explain what dark money is. Which kind of committees are we talking about here? Because I know there are a lot of businessmen, businesswomen, business groups that give. What is dark money, the way that you define it, Terry?
Yeah, so there's a couple ways. It's not fully transparent political spending. And you could argue, well, this is dark money, the other is gray money, the other is, I don't know, a light tan money, right?
Fuchsia money, yes. But, yeah.
But the idea is, so dark money is money that would come in and go unreported.
Just go to a group that all they have to do is report that we're this group, we're giving this much to a race, not say where it's coming in from.
Well, so for example, let's talk about examples. So if, for example, a group spends money between the primary and 60 days before Election Day, they don't have to disclose it as electioneering, right? So they might disclose that they paid some money, or they may not, depending on the type of group. They don't have to disclose it as electioneering. So let's make sure that money spent to influence the outcome of campaigns in that window is disclosed. When we have...
Because otherwise they could, instead of calling it electioneering, call it education.
Well, so it doesn't even fall into the definition of electioneering in Colorado. Okay. So we saw, I think at this point it was about a month ago, 2 pamphlets go out in support of 2 Republican senators in 2 of the most competitive seats. No one knows who put the money in. No one does, because it falls outside of that window. So let's close that loophole. Also, when you have independent expenditures or other types of entities that are spending money, and they may report, okay, we got $100,000 from Group X. Who is Group X? Who is that group? And that's what I'm saying. Hey, let's make sure that we have the actual donors being reported and disclose that in advertisements and on electioneering material. I just truly believe that more transparency when it comes to our elections is a good thing. More facts is always better. And if there are truthful or untruthful statements and attacks going out in against a candidate or going out in support of a candidate, we should know who's delivering those.
Okay. Good. So I think we're going to start kind of moving actually back a little way from issues here and talk about some big picture things. Talk a little bit about your history too. Sure. You mentioned you kind of breezed over this. You mentioned I came back to Louisville, started my own business.
Louisville.
Yes, sorry.
It's okay.
Yes.
I won't tell my neighbors. You just said Louisville.
That's all right. Sometimes I slip up and I call it Buena Vista instead of Buena Vista too. But let's talk a little bit about the business and your experience starting that business. How big is that business? Do you have employees? What did it teach you about the needs of the business community, particularly in regard to what they need out of the Secretary of State?
Yeah, so it was just my legal practice. So a one-person shop, and I really loved it. But when I talk about government being streamlined, I myself found it pretty confusing to know what all I had to do. I did. So I think, when I started my business, it's always a risk to start your own business, whether it's a legal practice, whether it's making candles, whether it's some huge cyber business. We want new business owners to really be able to focus on what they're trying to do. Especially in the first couple of months. I grew up in Colorado, and when I was in D.C. for most of my time in D.C., I was representing the state on just great issues, great federal issues, and trying to be a positive force. But coming home and starting my own business, it was fantastic, and I was very lucky it was successful. But I would have, when I say, hey, we need to make sure that new business owners know right where they start their LLC or whatever entity, that has to be right there. I'm talking from experience. And I'm a lawyer, but I didn't, as the first business I had opened, it was a great learning experience, and I think government should be really easy for people. It should be easy for people. But I've been working in Colorado since the summer after 7th grade. I started, like I mentioned, at the post office cafe, scrubbing dishes. I've worked at almost every single shop in Estes Park. So I waited tables, sold fur and leather, sold food, like Colorado food products, worked at hotels, all the way up to college, throughout college, and then before law school also. And I know, coming from rural Colorado, business owners need to be able to focus on their businesses. They do. They shouldn't get tied up in fines or, repeated letters where you just don't quite get what's going on. I think one of the things that the Secretary of State's office does really good, just really well, is the availability of all the great employees there to guide folks. But again, you don't know what you don't know, so it has to be really, really clear. We want small business owners to succeed. We do. And government should be providing the tools so that they can focus on what they want to do. The Secretary of State's office is the American Dream office. It's where you go to start your business. It's where you go to vote. Well, it's not where you go to vote, but it oversees our elections. So it should work really seamlessly. And this is the greatest honor of my life to be the Democratic nominee. And I hope to innovate and just take the office into the next decade. And hopefully we get there a lot sooner than other states.
Jenna, we've got time for probably one last question. Obviously, you're running against an incumbent. There are a lot of people that certainly like Wayne and the job he's doing. There's others that don't know a lot about him and the role. What would you tell a prospective voter in November about the main differences between you and the current Secretary of State, and make your final pitch to the voters?
Sure. Well, I'm a first-time candidate. I was the only woman nominated from the primary to statewide executive office this year, Republican or Democrat. And I'm a candidate that I know the value of hard work. I grew up going to food banks, ended up going to law school, first person in my family to go to a four-year college, represented the governor's office, worked on great policy for us, helped bring back more than $1 billion of flood relief, and successfully started my own business. I'm running because I've seen the difficulties with our elections and with starting a business. I've seen our elections on multiple cycles. I've seen those lines. In 2012, and I know we're getting short on time, I remember working on our elections and receiving a call from Northern Colorado. A U.S. citizen, a Coloradan, called for help because he was turned away from the elections, from voting 3 times. And we were able to get him to vote. But as Secretary of State, what I want to do is expand the franchise, increase participation, and make sure that in our internal election systems, the voter registration system does not go down, causing delays. And on the business side, I want to anticipate the issues that new business owners and entrepreneurs are going to have before they have them.
Jenna, where can we find you?
So please come learn more at Jenna for Colorado. It's JENA for Colorado.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, of course. Visit cobrt.com.
Jenna, thanks for joining us today.
To sign up for our October 30th cybersecurity event. Like and subscribe our YouTube page while you're here, and we will see you on Monday at 4 o'clock. Oh, Tuesday at 4 o'clock. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.